Not only do we have another guest for you on Survivor StockWatch, but we have an actual living astronaut on our show. If there's anything else you've ever wanted, this is the peak. This is the magnum opus of Survivor StockWatch,
Oh yeah.
and this is it. This is the episode to be here. Welcome everyone to Survivor StockWatch episode 10. I am Jack. With me is Will, and with me is Carson.
Us. You can say us. You don't have to say with me.
Well, with us, whatever. I'll say
Carson. We're friends. You know, we're chill.
We're all friends. Yeah, no, I feel very part of the family. I love that you called me an astronaut because I am wearing my astronaut jacket. And I think it's me just trying to foreshadow a little bit. Like I really, I would love to that is after Survivor, that has become my number one coolest thing I could ever experience is the microgravity. Whether that's me falling in an airplane and just experiencing it or actually being in space, I would be so elated. Like the idea of it is incredibly cool. And I would even say one of my favorite parts about having been on Survivor is the connections it's allowed me to make at the Space Center with astronaut Survivor fans. So I remember because I don't know. I'm not a big sort of there's only there's a select number of people I'll fangirl, but an astronaut is any astronaut I'll fangirl any day. So
well, impressive. Maybe astronauts more than Survivor players. Maybe I would be interested to see you as the next Survivor astronaut. Can we do Survivor in space? Do you think space is really like a frontier? Like an undiscovered frontier,
I think it's possible. I think it would be very far away, though. I mean, right now we're currently developing space habitats. Like I have friends that are working in space biology, for example, and the idea of growing agriculture and creating your own environment in space. I don't know if y'all are familiar with BioLab in Arizona, but they literally they're the entire facility is all water that's being circulated throughout the building, and it's self-sustainable, and it's kind of something we're trying to replicate on other planets. And of course then people are like, we're fine on Earth, and it's it's not about we're fine on Earth, and in fact we're not fine on Earth. We have a lot to work on, but it's more about pushing, what is possible in the human limits. And I think that's exciting. It's the reason that we have such an advanced water filtration system now. If we didn't have to literally filter the pee on the International Space Station to drinkable water, we wouldn't have the same, understanding of how to filter water that that technology is now used in Africa. So for people who argue hey, space is, it's a lost cause. It's ignoring our own problems on Earth. It's NASA takes up less than 1% of the U.S. government or the entire U.S. government's budget. How much do we spend on the military? So we are getting so much out of it technology wise that's benefiting not only the U.S. but everybody. So I think it's possible. I mean, I think it would be very far away, but if they built a beach that had its self-regulating temperature on Mars one day, who knows? We might have Survivor on another planet.
Would be interesting to see. Now, I don't know if that's ever going to really happen in our lifetime. But if time travel were to ever exist, put me on the ballot. I'm certainly love to be the first winner of Survivor Mars. Absolutely.
You would be the first boot. All right. You'd be the extraterrestrial Sonia Christopher. But Carson, that leads me to a big point. When people talk about space and we talk about NASA and whatnot, I think the biggest problem that the general audience has is the lack of immediate gratification. I feel like nowadays we kind of live in a world where, people want things to happen now. And when it comes to, NASA, when it comes to working, I don't want to use big words and use them wrong, so I apologize. But it's not really a field where you get instant gratification. Like what Jack said, this is something that won't happen in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
How can you make, because I'm on your side. I want us to still work on these things because I want that to be a future. What is your like defense? What do you have to say about that? Because I feel like that is one of the biggest arguments, because there are people, live in the middle of nowhere who wants to cut, funding to NASA because they're like, what does that have to do with me?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, this and it reminds me of how people confuse SpaceX and NASA as being competitors, and it's like, no, we very much
Yeah.
so work together very closely. But there's a lot of things to talk about with like money being wasted, and I feel like NASA oftentimes, or just space exploration in general now, with so many startups and SpaceX and Axiom, we have a lot of new space technology companies, which is great. It's a phenomenal thing that we're witnessing, because that's the whole goal of NASA, is to promote our economy to take over space travel, because the U.S. has been playing the long game for a good while, and a lot of other governments have, like the Chinese, the Russians, JAXA space of Japan. They're all focused on their just spending from the government and trying to push the bounds of what we know, while the US has a different approach, and it's you could argue it's very capitalistic, where we're saying that we know that in order for this to become something that becomes big, it could become something that we're going to take over, as a nation. It has to be something that's profitable for our companies, which is why SpaceX gets $4.5 billion grants that it's granted from NASA, because we want to promote the economy, to find ways to find it profitable, because in finding profit in it, we're able to then push the bounds of what we know by going in and exploring it further. But it reminds me of how, like, how hypocritical our spending is as a society, where we'll be like, oh yeah, we can spend billions of dollars on election campaigns, and then we can't spend $100 million on a probe to go find more information about Saturn. It just sounds hypocritical. So I don't know. I find that there are a lot of there's a lot of ways to waste money. I don't think space exploration is one. There's a list of all the things that have been found, or like have come about because of space exploration. Things like memory foam, water filtration, microchips. I mean, the list goes on. And pushing the bounds of science, I think, is a positive for everyone.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a more academic and more sound introduction to your slide.
Oh my gosh! What? Wait, this is so cool.
We do slides.
Yeah, I told you you'd be surprised.
Is this like my Edgic?
This is the first time that I've had my personal Edgic on the slides, because you are actually from a season where we did Survivor StockWatch. You were the first season that we did Survivor StockWatch.
The Genesis.
We're using big words. Absolutely. That was a beautiful discussion. I gotta say, I mean, it seems like life's going pretty well for you. You got a lot going on. You're very excited about the future. Any other cool shenanigans you're running yourself into?
I'm just trying to balance it all. I mean, Carolyn and I have started, just doing fun little recaps of the episodes, and Carolyn and I are fans of the show in a way that we've seen all of the podcasts before, so we get it. And I think like we've just kind of taken a different approach, where we're just like, let's just get on and chat and not really filter ourselves, and just kind of, and it's funny because people will be commenting like, these are not really recaps, and we're like, we're not like, we're aware. We're just here for a good time, and so it's, I don't know. I've been really grateful for my friendship with her. I don't know if y'all watch The Traders, but I'm excited for season 3.
Saw that official post today.
Did you see it? Yeah. All I'll say is, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be so good. So I can't wait.
Carolyn too. I don't think I've ever told Jack this, but I know Carolyn was really big in the online reality game scene.
Yes.
And we both played a game together, and I will never forget. I was like 15. I wasn't really active, but the only time we ever talked, she really complimented my acne because at the time I was 15 in COVID, and player named Cakes,
Yes.
was like, oh, I think acne's like kind of cool, and we formed this big alliance, and that is the most Carolyn story. I've been wanting to just bust that out. I do apologize.
Wait, what's your username? Because I'm gonna literally text her right now, and I'm gonna see if she remembers.
Probably not. I think I just went as Will. I had a Pokemon profile picture for the longest time. It was Super Smash Survivor, and again, this was like during COVID, and I don't remember a whole lot. I didn't make it too far, but I do remember her complimenting my acne.
Oh,
and that is a beautiful compliment to give. That's a beautiful.
I know. Jack, where's your acne?
It's gone because I got rid of it. I use face cleanser. I use all that kind of stuff. Anywho,
well, it's nice, Will, that she complimented your acne, because you know what she said about mine on the show. She said that she thought she saw a big old fly on my nose because I had. You're not kidding. I had, and it was horrible right before I went on there. So we had to wear I chose to wear N95s for like weeks before we went out to film, mainly because I didn't want to risk getting COVID, right? Like that would be how detrimental, like, if I wanted to play this for my entire life and COVID takes me down, so having that mask on you, like, just filtered all that gross air up to right here on my nose. I had the biggest zit, like literally the day before I started and the day I started, on my nose. And at one point she was like, I thought that was a fly. So she has a double standard with me, it sounds like.
It sounds like acne can go either which way.
Either way with Carolyn.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Next question, Carson. There's a little bit of a milestone coming up for Survivor. There's a little bit of a season where we're going to see some familiar faces on TV. Not asking anything about that for your process or anything, but what kind of things would you change in retrospect from your experience, having been like a year and a half or so removed?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think I would have changed anything. I may have practiced fire a little bit more. Like, if I could go back in time, I would have taken Lauren to the final four, not Heidi. Not because I didn't know Heidi was a fire beast, but like going back on my decisions I made out there, like I have no regrets. I had all the information I knew. I made the best decisions I could in the moments, and there's nothing I look back on or dream and be like, dang, I wish I did this. Dang, I wish I did that. Like, I felt like I checked every bucket list item for me. I won immunity. I had a fun time. I had a fun alliance. I had good friends. So actually, okay, I do wish I had voted for Carolyn. And that's not a dig at Jam Jam. I like Jam Jam a lot. I'll be honest, I thought Carolyn would get more votes than she would get. And so, I think Jam Jam solidified my vote specifically because of the way he helped me make fire at the end. And they show him helping me make fire, but they don't show how Carolyn reacted in that moment. Not that I get it. It's a game for $1 million and hey, we're all here as individuals. So no, I don't expect people to help me potentially beat them. Right. But it was the way Jam Jam sacrificed himself in that moment that really just, made me feel like this is beyond just the game. This is a real friend, and he's treating me in a way that gosh, I hope I can be like that one day. I even said I don't think I would have done that for him necessarily. And so, I think I just basically what I'm saying is that I wish Carolyn at least got second place because she certainly deserved it.
Yeah, no, that final scene, it kind of brought back how emotional Survivor could be, because for a while it's like Survivor 41, 42, it had a lot of negative weight attached to it, because it was so radically different from season 40, 39, 38, and then 43. It was like a new era Gabon. Like people, it was more like a fun time, fun ride. You get to have a whodunit. But 44 was the first season where it felt very narrative focused, and the story was about the Tika 3. And a lot of the biggest criticisms about 44, I think, are also some of the best parts about it.
That's a funny way to say it.
Yeah, because it's like a movie. Like it focuses so much on the Tika 3. So if you like the Tika 3, it's going to be,
and you like the season.
You love the season.
Yeah.
If you were more concerned about like Matt and Franny, and you want more like diverse gameplay and something more spread out, something more even, kind of like what this season's going for right now, then you won't like it as much. But I remember like one of the first times I've cried again from Survivor was the finale, because you looked at Jam, tears in your eyes. You're like, dog, why are you helping me? And I was like, you know what? I like this guy.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, because it actually kind of saddens me a little bit, because I don't think the story was just the Tika 3. And not in the sense that I think that like, oh shoot, like there were more interesting storylines to be told, because I don't think so. I think it was a very interesting, underdog story. But I think where Survivor 44 went wrong in editing was simply not showing almost how hard it was for us. So from a viewership perspective, it looked, because we're showing as the narrators, it just kind of looks like we're coasting along. Like these are easy votes, we're just sticking together. And it was so hard. Like it really was. And they made Jamie look like an idiot. They made Lauren look like she wasn't even playing. And in reality, it was like we were dealing with very complicated, very deep, rigid alliances that had been formed in the pre-merge within other tribes, and disassembling those was incredibly challenging. Like I think Survivor 44, the edit almost did us dirty, because it just makes us look like we're just coasting along. And it's like, gosh, we really had to work hard to do what we did, and it almost makes it look easy. And I remember one of the executive producers after coming up to me and Carolyn and Jam and being like, y'all had my favorite alliance of all time that I've ever produced, and I've been here since Heroes versus Villains, which was like really cool. And so then watching it look as though it was so easy, it kind of sucked a little bit, because it's like, I'm not like I need my story to be told, like, because I felt like it was, and I have my own memories to tell me what I remember. But gosh, I feel like if we had been able to have 90 minutes, those other storylines would have been able to be shown more. So it's a little bit like salt in the wound when right after us they start doing 90 minutes.
Well, I'll push back on you, Carson, because I think strategically it made y'all seem like y'all pretty much had it on lock. But I think it did show a lot of strife in forms of the personal connections between you, Jam, and Carolyn, because instead of showing, how Lauren and Jamie were these big players, it was more about how, there's a lot of distrust and a lot of hurt feelings, like at certain points where, Carolyn and Jam had their arguments, Jam and you at the very end. And so I don't think it made y'all seem like a bunch of coasters. I think it focused more on the social and introspective moments rather than the gameplay as a whole, because I think
that's true.
Objectively speaking, it's like if you make everyone seem like a big strategic threat or big strategic force, I think it just takes away from the fact that the Tikas did kind of dominate at the very end. While it was hard, and as hard as it was, being in a 3-2-2 split and then voting out the 2-2 is very impressive. I'm not here to gloat, or not gloat, to just suck up. I apologize, but I don't want you to have sour grapes. I do think 90 minutes would have helped. I also think 90 minutes will help every season to ever exist.
Absolutely.
Except for Redemption Island. That season honestly needs 30 minutes an episode.
That season maybe needed to be 45 minutes an episode.
And that's so true. That's what I say too, in the sense that like there are some episodes of these seasons where I'm like, I just wish they'd cut it. Like, it does not need to be 90 minutes. And some I do like it to be 90 minutes, but there's especially pre-merge, there can be some boring episodes. I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I guess I'm very biased when it comes to watching my own season. So
that's
I
fair.
also haven't rewatched it, so I really, it's been how long? Like years, a year and a half. So.
Okay, maybe some analysis on this current season of Survivor will spark your interest and going back to the past. All right,
right.
Survivor StockWatch rulebook. We remind everyone of the rulebook, and since we have a guest, we will explain the rulebook. For number 1, individual player slides. We are placing them based on their winning ranking. The lowest player has the lowest ranking. Yada yada. Whenever someone has a slash on the tier list, that is permanent. They are God. We believe they have no shot of winning the game. If multiple people have a slash, we are ranking them based on their placement ranking. And we'll talk about placement ranking through the show, but it doesn't factor into our winning ranking. And so with that, we go to our fellow Baltimore native, Will, saluting him. I thought he was a good representation of Baltimore. He all season long, he says he wants to be on the Mount Rushmore of Survivor. He does, maybe he does that with the shot in the dark give up. That was a pretty monumental moment, I'd say. But in hindsight, I don't know what I was thinking. So I had him at number 1, episode 2. I don't know what I was thinking. I was in a mind of my own earlier in this season. But based on just looking back at it, the negativity, the bold play, it was never going to get him past the mid-merge. And I think just from an edit perspective, at least, that was his peak. And we're back on track. Last episode, we kind of predicted Saul could maybe go to Final Tribal Council. That didn't happen. But we did predict that Gabe would go right around here, and we're on the money again. You have to trust us. We are like a lawyer in the swamp of thousands upon millions of lawsuits. Like we are the ones you should trust. But what do you guys think about Gabe? Any thoughts?
We shouldn't trust you, Jack. You had Gabe at number 1, 3 to 4. Wait until we get
rebounded.
What's that?
I rebounded. I came back.
Okay, barely.
I saw the light.
At episode 9. I think
Come on.
Is that again it was very negative and very contradictory, but it wasn't apparent. So Gabe, for a lot of episodes, he'd be like, I want to make these moves. I want to be, the number 1 guy. And then he was shown to kind of be passive and to kind of go along with the status quo and go along with the plans. And I think in part he was done dirty by the edit. I don't think he realized that he would not get a lot of screen time and that his edit would be as negative when he was given the confessionals and trying to make moves. But at the same time, it was looking pretty clear that he was dead in the water after Tuku was, not just established, but also swept away from the overall narrative in the late pre-merge. And Carson, what do you think about Gabe, both narratively, as a gamer, as a strategist, as a player, or as a person? I don't know if you met Gabe before.
I've not met Gabe. I found it hard to root for Gabe a lot of the time. And maybe that, and I would say, that might be more of a narrative thing than anything, where he just seems a little dry, from the show. There's just like not a lot of, I don't know. It's Carolyn always has a spectrum of like bot or human. And so she would always say, I'm on the bot leaning side. I feel like Gabe is all the way bot. So like, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the type of person I usually root for. I don't know. He definitely had a lot of confidence, which is not a bad thing either. It's just, I think that ultimately may have gotten in the way of him getting to go further. He kind of reminds me of the way Kane played on my season, where he almost only allows himself one path to go forward. And maybe I'm wrong, but like, and locks himself in with Tuku, and then, and then it's easily he's other people who are more socially adept in the sense that they're, have a lot of cross connections, are able to take him out by just kind of being like, well, he's an easy person to target. And so as a threat and for a lot of other reasons. So yeah, I think y'all's overall rankings as we go further definitely makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, Gabe definitely seemed like the person that was kind of the bridge for 2Q. Caroline, Sue, maybe even Kyle were like, listen, Gabe is a nice figurehead. He's going to lead us through these first couple of merge votes, get us through the confusion, the trouble. And then once he gets to this point, it's like, all right, let's get rid of him. Let's start to play it out a little bit. Let's play our own game, much like Kyle is trying to play his own game. I labeled this is the Bruce Peralt effect. You know Bruce, Carson, but I'm talking about 45 Bruce. In this instance. Sorry to do you like that. In a sense, what we've done is we've ranked him as last in every single episode since he won, I think, his second immunity challenge. Because we just think the second he loses, oh my God, the second he loses, he's gone. He's out the door. That hasn't happened. And the second we decide to rank Kyle any higher than last, he's going to go home.
He's going to
make us look like idiots. And I don't want that. So I'd rather stick him at the bottom and make sure he's there, just like we did with Bruce in 45, and just hope to God it works. But yeah, a couple things about Kyle. I think a decent amount of people are assuming that Kyle is kind of fitting like a be more than they seem kind of narrative. He was weighing threat options this episode, weighing his decision to get rid of Gabe. He's been doing that the past couple episodes. But that narrative is great, but it doesn't fit into Community because Community is quite literally brought up every single episode of this season. And Kyle doesn't really feel like he fits into that theme. And so I think that's where kind of a disconnect is happening. And not only that, but if you we'll take a look at the Edgic later. He hasn't really been focused a whole ton if he's not integral to the immunity challenge. But he could break the record. I mean, hey, he could win next. He could win the following. 4 immunities in any regard, I don't think is a small feat. So,
no.
What do you guys think?
I don't know if he breaks the record. I do think he ties. I don't know. I think the thing with Kyle is that he's also getting the rewards. And so he's able to fuel up on food. He went to the sanctuary this episode. And so he's constantly winning challenges, winning rewards, which gives him more food. He broke his veganism. So that's a little scary because as we know, vegans have superpowers. If y'all have seen Scott Pilgrim. It's just the lack of any focus on Kyle, the lack of anything outside of challenge related. Like even when he was, vulnerable, granted that tribal council was very chaotic and very wild with how Sam was blowing things up. But like we got like a one-off confessional about how Kyle was worried because that's the first time he's been vulnerable. And no one talked about him in any capacity or any light once he lost the challenge. And so it kind of reminds me of Xander in a way from 41, where he's just kind of there, not necessarily like the most passive of players, but just a player who was just kind of there winning challenges, good guy. Everyone likes Kyle except for Sue, but besides the point. But I don't know. I just feel like the lack of any attention to Kyle does kind of do him in, and I could see him maybe winning one more challenge. I could see him making it to episode 12. But like I don't see a way he makes finale, and that is different than I think most of the people I have slashed. And what about you, Carson? You a Kyle fan? I feel like you'd be a Kyle fan.
I do love Kyle. Yeah. I do. I actually think Kyle will make the finale. I have a feeling.
Really?
Hold on.
I don't think he's gonna get the final 3. I think he's gonna get 5th or 4th.
Because we do have a thing that we like to play whenever someone presents a theory that could be contested and may be considered crackpot.
And
had to play it.
I love it. Yeah, I For me, I'm getting Kyle's getting fit. Is for me. I could see him get 6th or 7th, but like I don't see him going next episode. Not yet. I think he's, there's definitely some, we started to see, okay, they've built in that Sue doesn't like Kyle. So that either is going to, something's going to happen with that coming up. And so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I just, maybe it's just because I'm biased because I like him as a character. And I feel like he's a little bit old school in the sense that he's not like, I don't know, he's not like every other new era person, and I appreciate that about him. So I kind of hope he gets in the finale. And I want
do you want to round question here from a loyal viewer, Jay. Does Sue not liking Kyle remind you of Carolyn not liking Danny in any regard? Maybe Jay's on something there.
Carolyn will kill me if she hears me compare her and Sue. But yeah, I would say Danny was a little bit annoying sometimes. So I don't know. But I got along with Danny. I don't know. I think, at least from what we've seen, it doesn't seem that Kyle is aware of Sue not liking him as much as Sue openly does not like him, as we've seen. And I think it's a little different. I think Carolyn and Danny's, they both were kind of aggravating each other. This wasn't shown, but Carolyn dropped a log on Danny's face while he was sleeping. Like it was back and forth on both sides.
Wait,
like it was like, yes, yeah, I was right beside Danny, and all of a sudden, and Carolyn is one of those people that she was up all night to an annoying level, and we would spend all day gathering firewood, and I'm talking a whole pile. Like it wasn't some couple of sticks. Yeah. And when I got to Ratu, I was shocked because they didn't have a fire. And it's funny because Jeff is always, in the pre-merge threatening to take away people's flint, but that was never a problem for Tika. He could have taken it. We could have never had our flint again other than the first day, because we kept our fire going all the time. And when we would leave before a challenge, we'd throw like 5 logs on there and get back and it's still smoking. So, that was never a problem for us. But Ratu, they had maybe a couple sticks. And so the amount of firewood we exhausted because of Carolyn is unbelievable. All night she was feeding that thing, never going to sleep. And so one night she's getting up and Danny is, right beside the fire, and she accidentally drops a log on his face. And I mean, it was I was like laughing in my bag. Like I couldn't even hold it in. He goes, ah. Then she's like, oh, sorry. And it was so funny. They just had a lot of back and forth. Even post Survivor, they had a fight on the show about whether cannoli had cream or ice cream. Carolyn on the ice cream side, Danny on the cream side. Obviously, cream's the right one. Like literal, like yelling fight. And so ever since we got home, every couple of weeks, they'll send each other pictures of cannolis and be like, look, I found an ice cream one. Look, I found a cream one. So they kind of aggravate each other.
That's beautiful to see.
How big was this log? Like,
yeah,
was his face like bleeding? Like, cause I'm thinking like he like threw like this giant stump on his face and like broke his nose, and
it was like a foot drop, so he was okay, but I'm sure it hurt.
Definitely a wake up
Robert De Niro impression.
So it awoke him. Yes.
What? I love it. All right, Sam, maybe putting the log down in terms of chopping the axe that is Gabe in this episode. I think it was a good retribution episode for getting him. Definitely still just taking some pot shots, though. I think his revenge tour, his Eras tour, is going to be wrapping up here soon. And it, I think this episode all but confirmed our theory that he's really keened in on getting some revenge and just taking some swings before getting out right around 7th. And that Dot, like he really did not want to listen to the Gabe this episode. He was very petty, especially at the Sean the Dark give up. Gabe was persuading him, and I could tell Jeff was kind of egging Sam to be like, hey, are you really going to let Gabe persuade you? Are you really going to let that happen? And I thought I think that, dominant, I'm going to do what I want kind of gameplay is going to fade out. And I think that Sam's going to be going here in the next couple episodes. But maybe you guys have different opinions than me. Who knows?
So I have a question for y'all. I referenced Survivor 43 earlier. Carson, do you think Sam has some parallels to Carla from 43 in terms of his narrative, how pre-merge he was in the power position? He honestly was in the best position along with Sierra. And I think that Sam knew his position a lot more than Sierra. Of course, Sierra did not get a lot of screen time, and so we didn't understand her line of thinking. And then once the merge happens, Sam's losing a lot of power and a lot of steam, and now he's playing defense. Now he's on the bottom. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want Sam to make it a lot farther. I instead of Kyle, I kind of want Sam to make it to that final 5, final 4 spot. I don't think he wins. I don't think he touches final tribal council. But I just think that it'd be so interesting to see the original glue guy, the person in charge and really running the show in Gata, to be on the bottom and to having to play in a position he's unfamiliar with.
Yeah, Sam's tricky for me because he has been someone that's been pretty narratively shown throughout the season. His arc, there are dynamic players and then there are stagnant ones. I think a stagnant character that comes to mind is someone like Sue. She's pretty much had the same story the entire time, same sort of personality, whereas Andy's very dynamic. Like, he's like going crazy first episode, now he's like all like so I don't know. Sam, I think, is dynamic in the sense that his storyline has gone from in charge to not in charge to struggling to find any sort of placement, and I don't really know where he's going to end up. I could see him make final 3. I could also see him go next episode. He's very up in the air for me. I look at the way they I'm not going to skip ahead but on other players, but I'm interested to see how he does. To be honest, he's a big question mark for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of avenues he can go right now. That Tugu kind of barrier, that wall, is kind of split up with that big figurehead Gabe going home. There's a lot of options, and like players could be picked up. Sue could be picked up as an ally, as we talk about later. Caroline can be picked up as an ally, certainly. Kyle can be picked up as an ally, certainly. And someone that may take advantage of that is Genevieve, who I don't know if this is a shock to you, Carson. I think a lot of people still have Genevieve high on their winner chances. We slashed Genevieve episode 3. We were
really
immediately we were like, nope, because here are the reasons. Win equity has been through the floor because people that are still convinced need to look at the first 2 episodes and see how the only confessional she got was talking about how much she liked Rome. That's the big thing. And I think there's a big thing with the edit that I think people need to understand is that there is a fine line of how people are edited nowadays between good winner and good player. Yeah. I think that Genevieve is a good player and she's being edited like that, absolutely. But good winner, it's not happening because there's someone else that has a narrative that's being built that is stronger. Genevieve is playing in the moment, playing the game, but there are other people this season, our top 2, that have narratives, that have themes, that have an arc from one side of the coin to the other. Now, in terms of being the final boss, I don't know. That's a little shaky for me now. I mean, she got called out heavily this episode, so in terms of the game, her time could be coming up sooner than we thought, It doesn't have to be final boss overall, like getting out at 5th or 4th. It could just be the final for somebody, and probably for our top 2 contenders.
Yeah, I think Genevieve too is like the big part of what makes Survivor StockWatch, because I think honestly, from what we've seen and what we've gathered, I think Genevieve is the best player. I think if we put Genevieve on 100 seasons, I think she does the best, better than anyone else. I just think that this is the season that it doesn't work out, where things happened. I think her involvement with Rome foreshadows her eventual demise, because she decided to cut Saul after Saul voted out Rome. And we saw a lot of that blowback today, or not today, last episode, where Genevieve couldn't rebuild those fences with Teeny. You know, Teeny was very, very hurt. Teeny was like, "You've betrayed me twice now. I'm not like, we can't do this anymore." And it kind of reminds me of Kim Spradlin and Kat from One World. Not in terms, I'm not calling Teeny Kat, but what I'm saying is their dynamic is very, very similar. The only difference is that, you know, if Kat had more allies, and more people that she was close with, that Kim decided to cut. But again, because of the narrative, I never saw Genevieve as a winner. I see her as well as like Omer from 42, the final 6 boss, where the eventual winner will take them out. And then while there's still more game to be played, it's a lot more open and shut and more of a done deal than it was, you know, episode 4.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually was going to bring up the slash for Genevieve too, just because of episode 1 and 2 before you even said that. So I was on board before you even started speaking about it. So I love her, and I think she's someone that I really like, and I hope she does return at some point, because you know, I feel like she is kind of like a dragon slayer. You know, I think there's been a lore of dragon slayers in the past, and like had she been on, you know, I thought Keyshawn was going to be the new Omer Zahir until Genevieve. You know, you know, she would have slayed the Queen Sandra. She would have slayed all the, I don't know, she's someone that like you know, she would have slayed Jesse early, and you know, I think she's someone who's incredibly underrated. But I agree, I do not think she has the ability to win because of the fact that her arc hasn't been shown in a way that would satisfy a winner's edit. And I think, you know, I think people who have had winners edits are people, you know, I think you could even argue like someone like Sam, or someone like I'm looking, or Andy. I think Sam and Andy, maybe Rachel. I think those are, you know, some people that I could see have a winner's edit. Whereas people like Caroline and, you know, Sue, Kyle, Teeny, I just don't see it as much, and Genevieve. So, but Genevieve for sure, because of the way she was edited, needs to have a slash, even though she's probably one of my favorites right now.
We should get you on this show because our predictions are perfectly in line. Look at that.
That's so funny.
Caroline was not slashed last episode. We were keeping her for posterity's sake. I'm done with that. I'm done. I have full faith in our analysis, full faith in our skills. Caroline's not winning this game.
There's no way.
There's nothing left to hang on. Yeah, there's nothing left to hang on to, right? It was a good episode. I will say it was a good episode. She had one confessional, but that confessional was very strategic, and it was about her finally deciding to cut Gabe, worrying about the ramifications. I thought that was fine. But new era winners get consistent and strong focus at this point in the season, right? We're in episode 10. We are in the final stretch of it. Sure, Caroline has been consistent, but it's not been strong, and it's never been strong. There's never been an episode where Caroline is broken out as this god-level strategist. It's never happened. And so in terms of the game as well, I mean, it's good for wanting to flip on Gabe. That's good. But it's bad for alienating Sue, because now I think Sue is going to be on a war path that we could see go any which way. And maybe this move comes back to bite Caroline sooner rather than later.
I would agree. I just don't think Sue has a leg to stand on. I just cut off Carson. I'm so very, very sorry. But I feel like Sue doesn't have a leg to stand on. I think now that Gabe's gone, Caroline was not really loyal to the Alliance. She was loyal to Sue. And now that they're split, I just see Caroline quietly getting voted out very, very soon. And I'm sorry, Carson. Please.
Oh, you're fine. No, yeah. I think that Caroline's going to go out very soon. Agreed. I think she might even be out next episode. And you know, I think that might be more because of the way I think she's been edited, where she's been there, but has she been? And I like her. I think she is a really interesting character in the sense that she's often like on the side of like, questioning what everyone else is saying, and she provides that like other side of thought. And sometimes she's right. And so, but in terms of a storyline that would be in line with what a winner would be, I think the slash is appropriate here.
Yeah, I mean, I think a really good, simple kind of through line for it is Will and I have talked about Sophie Clark in her South Pacific quite a bit and how she was edited. I think this is Sophie Clark in a different scenario where she's not going to win. Like carbon cut. It is Sophie Clark in terms of the edit, in terms of what she's talking about, in terms of how she plays. But there's no. I mean, you could argue there's a coach with Andy this season, but not really. And like the winning formula isn't there for a Sophie Clark figure; it's there for others. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. Oh, sorry. Last thing.
No, please.
The only reason that I ever get worried about being with these slashes and whatnot is because of someone like Gabler. I thought there was no way Gabler would win. And so that's where I get scared is that, but here's my theory. I haven't heard publicly or privately, to be honest, that season 47 was disliked by production. And so in that regard, I think that means that we're going to have someone that's on the more predictable side of a winner that we've, established here. If they ever say they don't like the season, that means they don't like the winner, which subsequently means who knows who's going to win. So I think this time it means that we'll probably know that, what I'm saying is our predictions are probably going to be more in line with a storyline that would make sense for a winner.
Yeah. I love that you highlighted the Gabler comment. Gabe was our Gabler insurance this season. Well, like we had a Gabler insurance, we had Erica insurance. They're both still in effect because our tattoo are basically both Gabler and Erica in different instances. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to get back to the rest of the contenders and then the actual contenders. We'll be right back.
Hi, Survivor Now podcast listeners. I am Katie from KT Designs, better known as Katie Tedesco Art on both Instagram and Etsy. I have been designing and selling Survivor products for over 7 years at my Etsy shop, including replicas like hidden immunity idols and Survivor trading cards with all of the players' stats on the back. I am so grateful for Survivor Now for giving me this shout out and helping me reach even more super fans. I love listening to their podcast. So if you are looking for some really unique reality TV products for yourself or to give a super fan in your life, come check out my Etsy shop at www.etsy.com/shop/KatieTedescoArt.com.
There we go. Go get some stuff. I don't have any stuff, but you should go get some stuff. Is Sue a murderer? Is Sue a criminal? I really don't want to think that. But based on this episode and based on the past couple episodes, I'm starting to. She might have murderous intent, and I don't know if that. There's been weird allegories to murder this season. There's been a couple of players that have like Sam cutting the rope early on, Sue with the melon,
the coconut,
and like, oh god, I'm scared that someone's gonna die out there. This is very interesting because Sue, obviously we slashed her. I think we slashed her last episode. Sue doesn't have a chance to win anymore, according to us. But this is interesting now because originally we had thought she is going to be the 5th place mom. She's going to be like Maria. She's going to be like Julie Alley. Like that's how it's going to be. I don't know. There's a little something else now because there's a little something else because of that scene with Andy establishing a potential final tribal council connection with Andy going up to Sue saying that I want to go to the end with you. I mean, that's very small, but it is something. And it's now different. I'm still keeping her at 5 because, Caroline is still, for me at least, is still 4. And Teeny is obviously still in this as well. But final tribal council for Sue is not out of the question for me. I think there is a high chance that she could be maybe 3rd, maybe 2nd, maybe get copping a vote from Caroline, maybe copping a vote from Gabe, maybe being like a Heidi figure. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but do you guys think that has legs, potential there?
I was thinking more Sherry from Caramoan.
Ooh, that's
like
a good one.
Strong pre-merge and then just fell off during. Not saying she fell off.
She did. She fell off.
But also like narratively too. Like the second Tiana went out, Sue lost all screen time. Like when the tribes were still there, you know, she had Gabe just like how Sherry had who was it? Shaymar. You know. The second that they lost both their allies, they just kind of looked lost. And so I could see Sue just slowly moving to the final tribal council. I know 2 players have mentioned wanting her there, both Gabe and Andy. And so it's not looking good for Sue. And Carson, do you like the Sherry comparison? I like to compare players to like some weird players, you know. We might get some Dan Lembo comparisons later on down the road. Fair warning.
I could see it. I think Sue's going to get third. She is very. She has the edit of a third placer, in my opinion, of a typical third placer. I feel like it would make sense for her to be in the finale because people probably would think that they can beat her. I think she's been shown in, on the show in a way that would make sense that she would get third. So I don't know. I'm getting definitely finale vibes for her specifically, or fourth place. So, but we'll see. I'm very interested to see where she ends up. She's been really fun. I like that she lies about her age. Not that she necessarily needs to, but I do wish there was a time where she won immunity with like the grip strength challenge, and I was like, gosh, I wish she was like, and all you little youngins, and I beat you easy on this, and I'm out here being 59. Like that would have been so fun. But
the age reveal, dropping the 59 right there.
Yes,
or she like or if she was wrong, she's like, am I 48 years on this planet? And then like how I'd be like, I thought you were 45. She'd be like, am I 45 years on this planet?
Right.
That was youngins.
Little slip of the fruity slip there. I'm still so embarrassed that I also had her at number 1 2 episodes in a row there. But you know, hey,
that would be embarrassing.
Listen, let me get a little get back here because Teeny was Will's number 1 for a while, and now we have last Teeny as well.
I disagree.
I'm done playing games. I'm done messing around. We have 2 contenders. You know who they are. That's it. End of story. This was a really nice episode for Teeny. I mean, the segment about inclusion and identity, that was phenomenal. And something that's like the good of having those home package, really personal stories kind of told in the episodes. That's the good of that. I really like those moments, and I really liked it from Teeny this episode. And even with that, though, the momentum isn't in Teeny's favor. It hasn't been for a while. In terms of gameplay, Teeny has been known to vote out number 1s 2 episodes in a row, the previous 2 episodes, and this episode really wanting to get back on Genevieve, and that never came to fruition either. And I think a really good allegory for what could potentially happen later down the line is the burning of the bag being a sign that she is the fire-making loser. Carson, we talked about in great lengths, beautiful, extravagant lengths with your season that you had fire in your eyes in the lenses of your glasses. And that was showing you were going to lose fire. We were on the money with that. Do you think that this could be the same kind of scenario?
I think so. I didn't think Survivor was that like nuanced in their ability to foreshadow and editing as they were with me. So I don't know. My season, specifically my placement, was spoiled really early on like Reddit or something, and which is always crazy. And I don't keep up with any of that anymore. But whenever I heard that, I questioned. I'm not questioning y'all, but like all these other podcasts. I mean, everybody or people who would say that online. I'm like questioning, like y'all just said that because my placement. I'm going to get fourth anyways. But Anyway, it could be. I actually can see that being I could see that being right, because like, why there's a lot of crazy things that happen. Why didn't they show Carolyn dropping a log on Danny's face, right? Like, but they did show that Teeny's bag burned in the middle of the night, which was kind of out of nowhere. So I think you might be on the money with this one as well.
Maybe I'm the best.
Hey, Jack, I think you should get the graph ready, because I have a comparison that's going to rock both of y'all socks off. Are y'all familiar with the player Colby Donaldson?
Oh my god. Where are you going with this one?
What if Teeny has a very similar trajectory to Colby Donaldson, specifically heroes versus villains? Because Colby Donaldson starts off the season pretty weakly, pretty not doing good, gets body slammed, pretty weak in the challenges, but then later on kind of has a resurgence very, very late into the season. When the heroes were getting pagonged by the villains in the late merge, he was able to outlast them, had that one final confessional where he's like, I don't know how to give up, I'm gonna do my best and try to turn the tide. I think Teeny gave a pretty similar confessional this episode when she's like, my bag's burning, everything sucks, it's a new life for me, I want Gabe gone. Gabe went home. Despite that, like, Teeny reconciled the fact that she's not going to get what she wants, and so they're going to make it work for Teeny. And so I feel like that just feels similar to Colby in Heroes versus Villains, and I want to know what y'all think about that. And I also disagree with Teeny being slashed. She is still my 1%, barely hanging on, just in case. I don't like the silence.
I don't know what I feel.
Think
I
she
don't know
can
how
win.
I feel.
Well, I'm not saying
Yeah, I don't. I know it's low. I think the slash is appropriate for Teeny. Just storyline wise, she's played very passively from the get go. She's always there, which makes me think she'll be in the finale. But I don't think that she has been shown in a way. I think she's been shown more on the, or more on the vulnerable side of things, more than anything strategic. Even with I think back to the decision that they made, giving in to Rome, and then voting out, a bunch of early people on the Red Tribe, it just reminded me of a passive player. And I feel like she has generally been very passive and chosen passiveness. And I don't think that's a quality of a winner that, is going to win this season. I think she's a great person and, someone that is easy to root for sure. I just don't see her storyline being something that would be taken, down the road as in a winner sense. And maybe she is like Colby, having a resurgence, but Colby got eliminated at some point too. So I think I'm guessing fourth place with what y'all talked about with the fire.
Maybe. I think the Colby Donaldson comparison is that's a little more crackpot than the normal comparison. I thought the Sherry one was pretty good, but now you're reaching a little bit here. So I was actually back and forth on slashing Teeny. I was here there because I think that Teeny has a great story. But I think the thing that kind of pushed it over the edge for me was this idea of individual story versus season story. I think Teeny has a phenomenal individual story, and I think it's going to be a great kind of arc that she goes throughout the entire season. We're going to see a nice beginning, middle, and end here. But I don't really feel like it fits in with that theme of community at all. I think it's a great self-enclosed kind of narrative that is going to be remembered for a while, but I don't think it carries with this season and actually winning the season and the narrative they're constructing for our top two, which starts with Andy. This final duel is going to be crazy now because never in a million years would you think that Andy is going to have a shot at winning this game at the end. But here he is. He is the one of the only two contenders left in this game. I think it was a great little segment for Andy early in the episode, kind of establishing his position. But I think a key thing to note, which is why he's still number two, even though some people I think are maybe a little higher on Andy, maybe putting him at number one here. he believes he is running the tribe based on his confessionals, and we see him having some interactions, but we don't really know what others think of him. Maybe Andy thinks he's kind of running the game, and he thinks he's like moving everybody to what he wants to do. But we don't really know what others actually think of him. Do they think of him as somebody who's a threat? Do they think of somebody do they think of him as somebody who needs to go in these next couple episodes? Or do they think he's kind of in a world of his own? Or do they have no idea? Do they have no idea what Andy's doing? I think that's a big thing to keep in mind, especially with the Sue and Andy final tribal council scene that could be important, for kind of establishing that losing finalist kind of pantheon in a sense. But regardless, I think Andy is a much stronger contender than Teeny. And while building the community isn't as strong, he is kind of building that. We saw the spider kind of allegory this episode. We saw him talking to almost everybody in the tribe. In so many sense, I feel like he's more dynamically working on that theme than any contender or any person that's lower than him in the contender list. So,
Carson, I'm gonna let you speak before me because I feel like I cut you off all the time. I feel bad.
No, you don't. Well, yeah, I think Andy. I think he definitely has winning potential for sure. Will he win? I don't know. He's had an underdog edit for sure, and we've seen how people underestimate him. At the end of the day, though, for me, even though I think he's had an underdog edit, I feel like that's kind of been shoved in our faces a little bit in a way that doesn't feel authentic to a natural, for me, like getting to know somebody. It feels like, here, look at how he's doing this, look at how he's doing that. And I think a comparison would be to someone like Carolyn, where Carolyn naturally is like that. I feel like they've had to show Andy this way to, make us see this part of it. And it's sometimes kind of like questionable. And so I think he's a great guy. And I think he has the potential to win. I don't know though. Is production shoving this in our face because he wins and they want this to be a big like storyline of an underdog? Or is this something that, is just going to show like how he is seen as a final boss? Like, why are they showing us this so much? That's the question I'm asking. And I don't know. Maybe it's just because there's not a lot of people with a lot of dynamics in the show that have changed a lot, and they might be just leaning into this underdog story because they like the underdog story. There are a lot of reasons this could be the case. I don't know what it's going to be with Andy, though. I could see him have winning potential. I also just think that something in my body's telling me he's not going to win, but maybe he does. I don't know.
My thing with Andy too is that there's a lot of very, very subtle negativity. There's a lot of cockiness that comes from Andy and a lot of the confessionals. I think back to when he was, celebrating the Annika blindside, and this episode, I think both those episodes, Andy seems like a very clear front runner. And I think that if that confidence is shown during Final Tribal Council, I think in a way that'll discredit his underdog story and his pre-merge story, because I think a lot of people, they're going to be like, it's like, yeah, you started off the game weak, but then you became an overdog, and so it's like we're judging you based off of now. And I just feel like his growth would seem a little more fake, a little more like for the style of like to win, like he was trying to mimic a David Wright storyline, or whatever player fits that bill. I don't know why I keep going back to MVGX. I was calling Teeny Adam Klein a few episodes ago.
Yeah,
that might have been my worst one. Now Teeny's Colby Donaldson. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Teeny. I just feel like that negativity, and with how one-sided a lot of his confessionals are, because again, kind of like Xander, it's like he's talking about so many things, but the only times other people talk about Andy, it's Rachel talking about their early on relationship, or people just wanting him as an ally or a number, instead of saying like, oh, Andy is a player who's in front right now, or Andy's controlling the game, or Andy's the swing power position player. In a season where we're hearing that about a lot of players, like in the last 2 episodes, Rachel was called a threat, Genevieve was called a threat, Gabe was called a threat, Kyle was called a threat. Sam, I think, was called more volatile than a threat, but still like a person to watch out for. And that does leave Andy just kind of by himself. And so that's why I have him at number 2.
I think that's fair. I think that Gabler Insurance, I don't think we 44, we had Jam and Carolyn, sorry, Carson, as the top 2 contenders kind of reigning throughout the rest of the game. I think that's going to be the way with Andy and Rachel. I think we've kind of narrowed down to our 2. And I think that it's going to be Gabler or Erica. And I think that Andy is a great antithesis to Rachel's story. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to play out in terms of what the jury thinks about them. And so obviously Rachel is number 1. A lot of people are concerned about Rachel this episode, that Genevieve not going home is bad for her. It's like the only, I think that's like the only blemish, but I'll explain some points. Maybe that'll alleviate your concerns. I think a winner quote that was perfectly established was talking about being the ocean instead of the captain of the ship, or the ship itself, because I think that ship is going to sink eventually. I think strategy and all that's going to go out the window. And I think being the ocean, I just think that's a winner quote. That's something a winner says. You can't really describe or dissect that. It's just that's what a winner says on Survivor. It's just how it goes. The rice moment in episode 2, pocketing rice at the challenge. It comes back full circle in this episode. That rice moment in episode 2, we were like, why is this here? Why does this matter? Now it matters. Now we have a tie-in. It's so random. The only one, this is a big thing that I don't think anybody else has noticed. In the Andy segment where he's talking about building this web and building connections, the only one to talk in confessional about Andy is Rachel. No one else does. The only one to give her thoughts on what Andy is doing is Rachel. And I think that's important. And then finally, Genevieve not going isn't necessarily the best, but I think it could be more establishing the final boss, right? Establishing the big final threat, the hurdle that Rachel needs to get over. And so I think that, yes, Rachel may have had a little bit of doubt this episode, but I think there's so many other things that are boosting her up that I think it's going to be worth it. And I think the arc is working.
Yeah. I just want to point out, if you look at the Rachel stock for Will West, episode 1 I had her number 1. And at only in episode 6 did I have her lower. And that was honestly her worst moment. And even then I had her at number 3. So I don't know where you get off, saying how you're trustworthy over me, because I had Teeny high when I had Rachel top 3 the entire season. There was one thing I want to mention too. Right after the intro, right? It's still the fallout of the tribal council. Rachel's upset, or not Rachel, Teeny's upset, and we see Rachel comfort Teeny. We see them talk. It was very brief, but I think that was intentional. I think that was shown there, put there, kind of like how Kenzie was always shown talking to Ben, being good with Ben. I don't know that. Then again, there wasn't a payoff outside of just highlighting Kenzie's social game from 46. But I think that could be very similar. I think that could mean that Teeny would vote for Rachel to win in a final tribal council. Honestly, I think we're gearing up for a Rachel, Andy, Sue tribal council where I think narrative is what's going to win the game. And I think Rachel will have more of a personable story and a personable outlook over Andy, who feels kind of body at the current moment. I feel like his underdog story is more about his strategic game. Rachel, I feel like, never really made any big mistakes the entire game. I just think the numbers weren't there initially. I can't blame her for trying to side with Annika during that vote. She had an established alliance. I can't blame her for getting flipped on because that's Survivor. I can't blame her for wanting Genevieve gone and that not going, because I think had that happened, had she not win, I think that would either have been cut, not shown, or shown in a different light. Rachel wanting Jen gone, I think, is true. And that not happening doesn't mean that she automatically doesn't win, because there's still a game happening. We can't just read the edgic the entire time.
Yeah.
And Carson, what do you think about Rachel? She's been my number one the entire season.
No,
come
on.
I agree that she's probably going to win. I think she has a very clear narrative that is in line with what we see in a winner. You know, I feel like I understand her game. There is a little doubt with me. Like, I could see there being some, like, you know, like, I don't know, random thing that happens and then everything is switched up. But at the end of the day, I think 9.5 times out of 10, she's going to win in this current situation. So I'm interested to see how things play out with her. I think it really will come down to her final tribal council if she makes it there, and whether she's able to explain her game in a way that resonates with the rest of the jury. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like, regardless of which people we see throughout the season go forward, I think we're left with a yellow tribe member having to win in this current situation, with the people we have left. I could see Andy, I could see Rachel, and I can see Sam all win, but Rachel by and far I think will win, and within these three and within all these people. So I'm interested to see how things play out.
Our views have been absolutely aligned from the stars. I mean, we talked about, I think it was 2 episodes ago, about the idea of complex tribe theory, and saying that Yellow and Gata is absolutely the tribe to focus on because they got so much consistent focus and their stories seem to matter more. And it's good to hear. All right. Let's go to the edit. Well, bam! Colors, charts, a bunch of stuff going on. No middle of the roads. No middle of the roads. I was done with it. I didn't feel like it this episode. I think Will has one middle of the road on there. But yeah, everybody is either complex personality or over the top. I think Sue getting the over the top -2 makes sense. I think that story is kind of building. Maybe seeing a final tribal council kind of edgic strip there. God, sorry. I think Rachel is still building really well. I think that it's just a streak of complex personality. I think she's really hitting her stride. I think Andy is hitting a good stride as well. A lot of negativity early on, but he's starting to build back from that, which I think is a great little thing. And then we're going to go to Wilt's and see if anything is really different. Do either of you have any thoughts on the edit, what you see, what you like? You think something looks good?
I personally had Teeny as complex personality because she brought her story back and the fire burning to her game and strategy. I think that was a very crucial moment. Don't roll your eyes at me, sir.
I didn't roll my... Oh, come on.
I'm not saying that that's like a winning, like she's the winner. But when we look at the edgic like that, that is what I personally really look for, is not just the personal package, but also how does that relate to gameplay? Think of Tommy from season 39. He opened the season, I am a teacher. My job as a teacher, I build connections 101. That's what I'm going to do in the game. And then everyone, the grandmas, they're like, all right, Tommy's winning. And so I don't think there's going to be any big payoff. However, I do think it is notable. I also had Caroline as middle of the road just because it's like she had one confessional about gameplay, and it's like just samey of what we've been getting.
I get it.
And I also had Andy as mixed because while he did get his way and was strategically there, it felt a little negative, but also not. So it's like
building the spider's web.
Yeah, Carson, one thing with edgic I always struggle with is is this how I feel about them, or is this how they're being like, is this their personality that's rubbing me the way that it's rubbing me, or is this a choice that the editors have made of what they're saying, the content of what they're saying, or even the tonality of what they're saying that makes it negative, positive, pretty mixed. And so I always struggle with that distinction, because I could say, like, I felt like the editors were trying to make it look as though Andy had a positive, like, strategic moment, but I agree. I interpreted it personally as more mixed and, maybe even a little bit like, in the middle of those two. So I struggle with that. Is this something that the editors are forcing on us? And so I try to look more at content versus how it makes me personally feel. So I might even say that Andy was being shown in a positive way, or Genevieve also positively. But this is where I always struggle with Edgic, is trying to differentiate in my head. Am I saying that because I'm biased and I'm interpreting it in a way, or am I saying this because I think the editors made a specific choice? So yeah, but I agree in terms of like complex and then middle of the road and all of the things you have so far, especially Sue's over the top.
I see that. I also think that's what makes Edgic so much fun. It's like cave paintings. It's like we're trying to decipher it any which way, and there is no right or wrong way to look at it. And I think that's why I've been really enjoying it. This is my first time doing like a proper Edgic. I've been doing the stock watches and like ranking players based off like winner potential. But this is my first time like getting a spreadsheet and typing in OTT Ed and CP4 and so it's been a new experience. I've had some questionable picks, but do it from the gut. That's all you can do.
We gave Will some creative freedom this season to really let the lashes go, let it fly. Carson, this is why you were. I think it was the first episode we did. We were like, Carson is probably the best guest we could have on the show.
Yeah,
because of his like edit analysis and like doing all that data crunching and all that. So I mean, that kind of Edgic summary and kind of your kind of critique on it, I think that's full circle. That feels good. All right, let's close it out. Join our Patreon. Really cheap. You want to get a free trial, you want to watch some good videos, please get on there, do it. You want to stay, pay some money, hey, it's not too much. Hang out. We got our shop, got some merch, get some Survivor StockWatch merch. Obviously, we're the best show on the Survivor Now podcast planet. Follow us, Instagram, Twitter, X, yada, yada. And then don't forget, like and subscribe and listen to all our stuff. We talk a lot. So just listen to all of it and like it all. It's fun. All right. Well, I think we'll end it. I think we'll end it with Jay's last question. Who do you want to see on Survivor 50? Maybe even you want to see yourself. Who do you think would be good on that season?
I would like to see Carolyn. I would like to see. Sorry. I know a lot of people say that they don't want to see winners, but I would personally like to see Marianne play again. I want to see Christian. I want to see Angelina. I would love to see Umar Zahir. I would like to see Charlie. I would like to see, let me think. I don't want to see Shan. Actually, I think it would be fun if she was on there. Like, it's more of like, personally speaking, from people I know, I wouldn't want to see her playing with like my friends. So
yeah.
Fair. So, but no, I'm excited to see what goes down. It's very interesting within the community, the paranoia that's ensued. Thankfully, I would say I'm more on the side of like being a little bit more indifferent with it all. I'm not going to really go into detail with that, but like, at the end of the day, I felt like I had my Survivor experience, and I enjoyed it. And I also have enjoyed being a fan again. So I don't know if I ever necessarily would want to do it again. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
I'm surprised you didn't say Dan Barry, Dan Fuego. Survivor panel.
Oh, Dan Barrett.
I think he's too old now, and that sounds mean to say, but like, sometimes it gets to the point where it's like I don't want to feel sad for somebody,
Yeah.
like, but Dan would be very cool. I was walking through one of the hallways in the astronaut building and saw his portrait, and I took a selfie with it. I was like, Dan, yeah.
Cool. I was gonna ask if you ever met him or talked to him, because I've obviously there's a connection there with y'all too.
Yeah, I've never met him. I'd love to at some point. I've become, I think, the new Survivor guy at the Space Center. So, happy to carry on that role.
You've become the next Dan Barry, essentially.
Well, I'm not an astronaut, but I guess that'd be cool. So, yeah. If it ever happens, my sights are set on being seeing and experiencing microgravity. I guess you can't really see it, but you know what I mean. Like seeing myself float, that would be cool.
I just want to see regular gravity, not feel it, but see it.
What? See it?
Yeah.
You see it every day, up and down. That's you seeing gravity work, right?
Oh my God, you changed my life.
Oh my goodness!
Told you I was Stacy.
All right,
Carson changed my life.
Will Carson? This has been the Stocks.
He does this every episode. I tell him to calm down.
He never did. I love it.
Don't encourage him.
You both have any final thoughts?
Rachel's gonna win.
Rachel's gonna win. Teeny's the new Colby Donaldson, and
Kyle's getting fifth place.
Kyle's getting fifth place, and Gabe's the new Dan Lembo.
Gabe is Dan. What?
No, Sue is the new Dan Lembo because.
Okay. I was about to
say. That makes sense.
Not really, but we'll let it slide for a little bit. We thank you all for joining us for this episode of Survivor StockWatch. It has been truly, truly magnificent, and we can't wait to see you for the next episode, where our theories are sure to be 100% accurate, and we are the absolute whole truth. None of our opinions are wrong, and we are the best.